Phyllida Bright was not an ordinary housekeeper. She happily and deftly managed Mallowan Hall, the large home of Agatha Christie and her husband, Max Mallowan, located outside the village of Lisley in Devon, but she also had a number of hidden talents, including the ability to pick locks, climb into a second or third, when necessary, story window, and sense from 2 floors below when her housemaids were holding up the wall and gossiping instead of holding up their feather dusters and employing their mops. And she had lately come to realize she had a knack for solving murders. Aside from this recently discovered penchant to follow in the footsteps of the fictional Tuppence Beresford, Bundle Brent, and others, Phyllida, who had been friends with Agatha since the Great War, was also the recipient and keeper of a number of secrets. Not only her own secrets, and there were many, and those of her employer, but also those of a number of other people, both famous and infamous, in the highest levels of government, of the wealthiest of the wealthy, and even of the lowliest servant in the grandest of homes. For some reason, people tended to think of Phyllida as a sort of impervious cistern of information and confidences, as well as a sage of wisdom for advice and pragmatism, and that, Phyllida could only conjecture, was why she was currently sitting in the front parlour at Mallowan Hall with Mrs. Vera Rollingbroke, who was married to the wealthy and affable Sir Paulson Rollingbroke, better known as Sir Rolly. Mrs. Rollingbroke was an attractive woman in her early 30s, with an air that sometimes bordered on bird-brained, yet Phyllida had come to discern a subtle layer of shrewdness in the younger woman's mien, and she knew the woman's skill in writing detective stories seemed to have improved over the last 2 months, possibly because Mrs. Rollingbroke had been involved, on the periphery at least, with some of Phyllida's murder investigations. But the 2 of them had been sitting here for more than 10 minutes discussing the weather and little else, and Phyllida was still mystified as to, specifically, why Mrs. Rollingbroke would have requested a private meeting with her at Mallowan Hall. Although Phyllida was a high-ranking servant who had an unusually familiar and egalitarian relationship with her employer, she was still, after all, a servant in the eyes of everyone else. "I do appreciate your meeting with me, Mrs. Bright. May I call you Phyllida?" said Mrs. Rollingbroke as she leaned forward, her voice low as if in confidence. "I feel as if we've become friends over the last several months, you see." "Of course," replied Phyllida encouragingly. Mrs. Rollingbroke was wearing one of her extremely fetching hats. This one was dark red with a swath of netting over one eye and a jaunty bright red feather arching toward the back. Silk roses in shades of crimson, pink, and other similar hues were tucked in along the brim. As usual, Phyllida admired and mildly coveted the woman's chapeau. Mrs. Rollingbroke, whose figure was slender and lithe, was always dressed in the most flattering and newest of fashions. She had dark blonde hair and vibrant blue eyes. Her features were nothing less than patrician, enhanced by the subtle employment of cosmetics. Her fingers were long and elegant and studded with bejewelled rings, but today they trembled ever so slightly.